Hello, everybody. I want to touch on a question that I get so often, and that is, what have been the differences between my 6 pregnancies? And while that's a pretty challenging question to answer, only because they've been so different, I thought it would be a good topic to tackle because a lot of new moms want to hear what's normal, what a pregnancy should seem like, because it would give them some sort of comfort in thinking that their pregnancy is going well, or maybe you're comparing your current pregnancy to a past pregnancy in hopes to see that maybe the pregnancy is going on the right track. Unfortunately, I really don't feel like that is a really helpful way of looking at your pregnancy, because I can tell you from experience, all 6 of them have been so different. And it's kind of interesting because it somewhat correlates with the different personalities that my children have as well. So I'm going to try to tackle this question without going into too much detail and hitting on some of the points that I know a lot of you are really interested in hearing about. So first of all, I want to let you know that my pregnancies really spanned in ages, of course. I had my first son, I was pregnant at 26 with my first son, and he was born right after I turned 27. And right now I am 33 weeks pregnant with my 6th child, and I just recently turned 40. So, there's a lot of different ages that I've covered in my 6 pregnancies. And a lot of people will tell you that the older you get, the more challenging the pregnancies are. And I can tell you from my experience, again, this is only from my experience, that that is not the case. So if you are a mother who is trying to start a family or adding to your family and you're in your late 30s or 40s, don't expect this pregnancy to be more challenging than if you were younger, because I can tell you that this pregnancy has been the easiest, most enjoyable pregnancy out of all of them. Maybe that's just a fluke deal. So different ages, it doesn't really matter. I don't think it would matter to most people as long as you take good care of yourself and you stay active. I don't think it matters if you're in your early 20s or if you're in your 40s. So that is one thing that I can say. The differences in my pregnancies, yeah, I felt different throughout all of them, but I feel better in these later pregnancies than I did in the earlier pregnancies. So then there's the old wives' tales of if it's a girl or a boy. Now I have 4 boys, and I'm pregnant with my 2nd girl. So I've gone through, a lot of pregnancies with each gender, and I can tell you that they don't really seem to be gender specific in any of the symptoms that I've had. So it has nothing to do with weight gain or how I carry, it has nothing to do with how I feel, or even, questions about people say that when you're pregnant with a girl, she kind of sucks the beauty from the mom as you're pregnant with, making your face break out and losing hair and things of that nature. I haven't experienced that at all with my girls. So, it really doesn't seem to be gender specific either. One of the questions that I get a lot, especially from my doula clients, is your symptoms early on. Was that pretty standard with all of your pregnancies? And no, it wasn't. So with some of my pregnancies, I knew I was pregnant before I even tested because of my symptoms. I felt nauseous, crampy, and hormonal, just overall hormonal. I felt off. And then there were some pregnancies that I found out I was pregnant. I had no clue. And I didn't get any symptoms until 2nd trimester. So that differs a lot too. And I don't know, what factors come into play with that. I don't know if that's something that, had anything to do with my activity level or kind of the place in my life that I was, but it was kind of staggered. With my first pregnancy, I had a ton of symptoms right away. And with some of my later pregnancies, I had no idea until later on. And this last one, I knew before I even tested. So, they're all different. So I don't want some of you mamas out there who are trying to assess the viability or the health of your pregnancy based on your symptoms. And I know that there's a lot of women out there who like to look at things like morning sickness, the level of nausea or food aversions and all those kind of things, and use that as kind of a barometer to see if they have enough hormones going through their body to sustain the pregnancy. Please don't do that. You will drive yourself crazy doing that. I can honestly tell you, like with morning sickness, I did have morning sickness through all of my pregnancies. That's probably one of the only constants that I've had through all my pregnancies. However, the severity and the duration was different for all of them. So, some of them started at 4 or 5 weeks and went to maybe 11 weeks. And then some of them started at 9 weeks and went to 15 weeks. This particular pregnancy is very unique in that I started getting morning sickness at about 7 weeks. And I've had it through my whole pregnancy. It's gotten a little bit better in my 3rd trimester, but there's usually always a time of day where I just feel sick. And I've learned to cope with it and manage it better. But I didn't have that in any of my other pregnancies. Once my morning sickness stopped, it stopped for good, and I never experienced it again through the entire rest of the pregnancy. So, they are all so different. I cannot stress this enough. There are aspects to pregnancy like getting up to use the restroom. And as you are early in pregnancy, they attribute this waking up and having to use the restroom in the middle of the night to hormones. As you obviously get later in your pregnancy, the baby gets so big and leaves less room for your bladder. And so you just don't have enough room to hold as much capacity as you had before. So of course you get up to go to the restroom. So with my first pregnancy, I found out I was pregnant, and within a week, probably at like 6 weeks along, the hormones kicked in, and I got up like clockwork every single night to use the restroom. And that went through the entirety of my pregnancy. This pregnancy, here I am at 33 weeks. The baby is very big. And maybe I get up once or twice a week to use the restroom in the middle of the night. And that has been pretty much through my entire pregnancy. First trimester, it was a lot less, of course. I just didn't have whatever it was in my past pregnancies that got me up in the middle of the night to use the restroom. I just didn't have to. I'm drinking the same amount of water. I don't know what to attribute that to. So, of course, that's a big difference. And it was something I was a little bit concerned with, even though I'm here making this video telling you not to be concerned with these symptoms. I asked my midwife, am I doing something wrong? Because I'm just not getting up. And she said, no, it just happens. Acne, breaking out was another one. Oh my goodness. For my first 2 pregnancies, my face was a mess. And it was from the beginning to the end. My first pregnancy, my forehead was the only place that broke out. And it broke out so bad that I actually cut bangs to cover my forehead because I was so embarrassed. And it was just isolated to that spot. And my next pregnancy, it was kind of just all over the place. And I can honestly say the few after that, I had breakouts that were more frequent than normal. I wouldn't say it was horrible, but they definitely came more frequently. I usually always had one blemish somewhere on my face. This pregnancy, I've had none. I don't even think I've had one zit through this entire pregnancy. And, like I said, I've had people tell me that with girls, usually your face is a mess. And this is the only pregnancy that I haven't had any zits at all. So, wow. that's another really odd thing. Again, that might be something that is within your control though, and it's something we'll touch on here in a little bit. But hormone breakout, if you have the hormones and they're going crazy and your body doesn't know how to handle them, then a lot of times they just come out in your skin no matter what you do. So I don't know really what to attribute that to, but I've been very grateful to not have any breakouts this pregnancy at all. Food cravings, oh my goodness, that's another one. Every pregnancy I've craved different food. That's so weird. There has never been a constant in the cravings that I've had. I don't want to get into specifics, but I can honestly say that it's just been so strange, the foods that I really, really need to have around me through each pregnancy, and I can go back and note each one of them. And food aversions is the same thing. There's some foods that I just could not even stand looking at in some pregnancies, and then they became a craving in another. So you definitely cannot base any reasoning behind that as well. There are a lot of women who have food cravings based on the kind of nutrients that they are lacking. They might be craving, spinach or almonds or something like that. They might be low on iron or calcium, and these cravings come up and need to be addressed if that's the case. I'm usually really good at tapping into what I feel like I need, and of course, being vegan throughout most of my pregnancies, I am very careful about choosing the correct foods to make sure that I get a wide variety of everything that I need. But, when you have those cravings for those things that aren't necessarily something you need, they're just something that sounds really delicious, they've varied so much throughout every pregnancy. This particular pregnancy, it's been apples, and I just cannot keep apples in the house. I go through so many a day. It's kind of scary. Aches and pains. I get this a lot. People ask, are there any consistencies throughout your pregnancies on what bothers you physically? And I can say that pretty much across the board, my hips have always been kind of my weak spot. And of course that's going to differ for each person, but just sleeping, laying on, you sleep on your side when you're pregnant, sleeping on my hips. I'm constantly flip-flopping back and forth. However, with this pregnancy, they really don't bother me that much. I might wake up once or twice a week with any sort of hip pain, leg cramps, which a lot of women experience through pregnancy. I haven't had that yet with this pregnancy and my last. And that's really interesting because it was something I battled horribly with my first few pregnancies. Sciatic pain, things of that nature. I haven't experienced that with the last couple of pregnancies, but my earlier pregnancies I did. So aches and pains, they differ, but again, I think that's one of those things that's also in your control, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. Back aches, that's another one. I experienced those through all of my other pregnancies. I have not had any issues with my back this pregnancy at all, and usually I have experienced that a lot earlier in pregnancy as well. Being at 33 weeks and not having any back issues, it's been wonderful. I do have 5 other kids. I am picking up my 2-year-old often. I try not to pick up my 4-year-old as often, but I wear my 2-year-old when we go out. I baby wear him still. And to not have back pains using, a sling or wearing him like a rucksack on my back, that's really awesome. So again, depends on the pregnancy, I'm sure, because I did definitely baby wear my other children through my other pregnancies, and I had lots of problems. Swelling is another one. I've never been a big sweller. I just, my ankles, my fingers don't swell all that much, but all the rings that I normally wear, I have been wearing through this entire pregnancy, and they have not gotten any tighter. The only time I experience that is when I eat a meal with lots and lots of salt. But, you know, you're asking for it at that point, whether you're pregnant or not, you're going to get puffy. But as for normal pregnancy swelling, it differed each pregnancy with that as well. So some of them I wasn't able to even wear my wedding ring, and I put it on a chain around my neck. And some of my other pregnancies, you know, I was in labor with my wedding ring on, and it didn't bother me at all. So again, another big difference. So the other question I get often is feeling the baby move. And a lot of people say it takes you a lot longer with the first pregnancy because you really don't know what that feeling feels like. And then in the next pregnancy, you know a little bit better, so you can identify it earlier on. But a lot of the factors that come into play with that is where your placenta is, if it's on the front or on the back, your activity level as well, because if you're active all day and you're not actually sitting to really concentrate on feeling the baby move, then you might miss it altogether. And there's just a lot of factors that come into play with that. 2 of my pregnancies, my placenta was on the front, and the rest of them, my placenta was on the back. I could not feel the kicks as easily when my placenta was on the front because it was buffered. This pregnancy, I really didn't feel much until like 18 weeks. And I know after, 6 pregnancies where and what that feels like. And I didn't feel it. I watched for it. I paid attention. I know the feeling. And it wasn't till like 18 weeks. But then some of my other pregnancies, it was as early as 12 or 13 weeks. So lots of factors come into play there, but I just don't want mamas worrying because they're, 17 or 18 weeks and they haven't felt their baby yet. Some women don't feel it until 20, 22 weeks. And again, it has a lot to do with where your placenta is, your activity level. There's a lot of factors that come into play. But I can tell you that it did not get earlier and earlier with each pregnancy that went by for me. And the last one, and I will do another video more specifically on this later, but the onset of labor and labor itself. That one is one that I could talk about for a long time. And I'm going to try to make this very, very quick, but they were all so different. And they did not get easier and shorter the more pregnancies I went along. Actually, my 5th baby, my last child, was my longest labor. Probably also my most painful. My 2nd birth was the quickest and the easiest. I mean, there's just no rhyme or reason to this. There's a lot of different factors that come into play with that I'm not going to get into in this video. I will in another video, but it has to do with a lot of things that are both in your control and out of your control. So yes, from the onset of labor to the actual birth, they varied so much. I could probably write a book about the differences between them. And that is, from whether my water broke at the onset of labor, or if it broke right before the baby was born, or if I had to have it manually broken, or whether I had one birth that I went into labor because I was bleeding so bad, and there was no other reason for that other than I was just dilating so fast. And then I had another labor where I just wasn't dilating at all because the baby wasn't putting enough pressure on my cervix. They were night and day different. It's just so interesting going into labor with this huge mystery of how it's going to present itself. Because again, I don't know if my water will break and then I'll start contracting, or if contractions will start happening and go away. Braxton Hicks, through some of my pregnancies, I've had Braxton Hicks for weeks and weeks leading up to labor. And then some of my pregnancies, I didn't have any Braxton Hicks. So very, very odd. There is no congruency between any of that for any of my pregnancies. So that leads me to the things that are within your control. And I did do a video on this. Those are things that are well within our control that we can help ensure that we have a happy, comfortable, healthy pregnancy. And those are things like the amount of rest that you get, the food that you eat, your activity level, how you stay hydrated, your mental well-being. These are all very, very important aspects that definitely play into having a more comfortable and happy pregnancy. Now, I can attribute those factors to having such a great pregnancy in this sixth pregnancy. Again, here I am, 40 years old, and it has been by far my easiest pregnancy. I drink a lot of water. I exercise every day. I gave up sugar completely, so I don't eat any refined sugar. I definitely eat fruit and things like that, but no refined sugar. I'm vegan. I've been vegan through almost all of my pregnancies, so that's not a difference, but giving up sugar and just eating a more whole foods type diet. These are all things that you can control. The fact that I haven't gained a lot of weight, I've gained less weight in this pregnancy than I have in any of my other pregnancies, has, of course, helped contribute to my aches and pains not being as bad. I think that helps with my hips not hurting at night, my activity level. I'm not tired during the day. So some of these things are well within your control. I know that this was not the case when I was 26 and pregnant with my first son. I had that mentality of eating for two, and I took advantage of that, to be honest with you. And I gained a lot of weight, and it made the pregnancy more challenging. It made labor more challenging, and my postpartum period a little bit more challenging as well, both physically and mentally. You can really set yourself up for having a really wonderful pregnancy just by making really healthy choices, moving your body, drinking lots of water, eating really good food, keeping your inflammatories down. But then there are some things that are completely out of your control as well, that are really just controlled by hormones, possibly the personality of the little one growing inside of you. There's just this magical synergistic energy that happens between the mom's body and the baby's body that creates this experience of pregnancy. And they're going to be just as unique, each child, as their personalities once you meet them. So I hope this helps a little bit set your minds at ease, give you guys some comfort if you're sitting around and stressing yourself out trying to compare pregnancies to see if maybe something's not right, because I've spent a lot of time doing that myself as well through my pregnancies, and having this experience with 6 different periods of living with a little person inside of my body. I can tell you that each one is so unique and wonderful, and just enjoy it. Do everything you can to make sure that you and the baby are healthy, but enjoy it for what it is, each its own unique journey. And until next time, be well.